Welcome back, Front Porch Chronicles, where we keep it real, rooted, and raw. I'm your host, Clinton Foshee, and this one is a special, near and dear episode to my heart. A guy that his energy is unmatched. We went from dorm room talks to real life growth. Today, I'm joined by one of my day one brothers from AS. Come on, dude. Let's go. Back then, it was all struggle and hustle. He was from Norfolk, Virginia. I was from Alabama trying to figure out what he was talking about. He was trying to figure out what I was talking about. Somehow we ended up in the same dorm, same floor, 7th floor, Benson Hall, still repping to this day. Now we're grown men, fathers. He's an educator. I'm a real estate agent trying to do this little podcast thing. We're still chasing purpose, just deeper roots. Let's get into it. My brother by another mother, Mr. Winfred Thomas. Let's go. What's up, brother? How are you doing?
I'm all right. Always good to hear from you. To this day, I still hear back from my friends who came down to Alabama State and whatnot. I guess to the world, Clinton Foshee, but I met you as Eastdale. They'll ask me, "Yo, what's up with Eastdale?" Those who did not know, Clinton was one of the few Caucasian students on Alabama. He attended at HBCU, and it's hard. It was hard to miss him. Beyond the fact that he was his own guy, had his own energy or whatnot. Like I said, he was a Caucasian guy on the yard. So
I was see through. Now look, that talent show, you wouldn't have thought I was Caucasian.
that was that was you. That was you,
Bro, if we would have had video back in the day, my kids would have hated me. To this day, my kids would be like, Dad, don't ever post that again.
There's a reason why technology is the way it is.
Let's take it back to Alabama State days. The CAF, the dorm rooms, campus life. What stood out to you the most about those days?
I know, initially coming to Alabama State is in Montgomery, Alabama. It is decidedly the South. And what stood out to me coming from Norfolk, Virginia, which is in the South, but it's not necessarily seen as Southern.
South. It's not SOUF. It's South. SOUTH. Y'all spell it right up there.
And I remember coming to the school, and when you go to college, whether you're going to a PW or HBCU, typically you have factions. And at Alabama State, there was obviously an Atlanta faction coming from up north, a Chicago faction, a Detroit faction, a Milwaukee faction coming down. And what I remember is being from Virginia, it was just me and another guy from Hampton. People on the yard, trying to be helpful, were like, "Oh, well, he's from Hampton and you're from Norfolk. Y'all should link up." And they put us together, and me and him, just like we really didn't have much in common, because Norfolk back home and Hampton is in Norfolk, even though they are literally across the water. They're 10 minutes away from each other, but it's two different worlds, two different cities. And I found myself, like you, somehow, some way, aligned with the guys from Detroit. And when you're young and you're obviously highly impressionable, and I came there to Alabama State with a sense of myself, but you still want to find a clique, find your people. And it wasn't long till I'm in the cafeteria parking lot fighting with Detroit against the Milwaukee Bulls.
We're gonna get into that in a minute. You know, For me, going back, one of the things that I always respected about you, and I'm in this season right now where I'm taking things back to my roots, but I'm also really being intentional in my words. And one of the things that I always respected, and still to this day, was not only your energy, but your morals, and you always standing your ground on who you were, no matter who we hung out with, no matter where we went. That was one of the things still to this day. So when I got ready to do this podcast and in this new season of getting away from just being fighters, I wanted to reach out to people that left a lifelong impression on me. And you were one of those people that, besides just like, oh, that's somebody I went to school with. I wholeheartedly always respected you on standing on business back before they even had the term standing on business.
Well, me and you, we had a couple of episodes, and so much of who you are initially when you get to college that freshman year, everyone comes with their story and their yearbook. But I remember an episode when me and you have remember when we went over Note's house and one of his friends opened up the door with a gun. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember he had, and I personally like, that's not fly to me. I remember
Yeah.
after that, I'm not gonna go over there much. And I remember Note coming to me on the yard and being like, "Yo, I haven't seen you around. What's going on? You ain't been around." And I'm like, "Hey, that guy pulled a gun on me and planted the door, and that's not anything I play with. That doesn't seem like a welcome environment to me. So I'm gonna keep distance." And Note to his credit was like, "Yo, that's not anything I stand on. I'm sorry that happened to you." And he was like, "I want to let you know, you're welcome at the apartment. You don't have to stay away or whatever." And, I started to come around again. But, when that happened, I remember because I was at the door and you just dove like you should have. And what, like, because why you, coming to the door, with a gun out. And as you know, there were several situations at Alabama State where, gunplay came into play. But my thing is, to your point of like standing on business and whatnot, I always looked at it as, hey, my parents sent a individual down here, and the expectation is that I make it back home better than what they sent me to. So I never really had an issue with remembering like who or what sent me down there.
Yeah, it's crazy, and this is gonna sound off cuff, but that person that pulled the gun, how odd was you live by the gun, you die by the gun.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And, I tell people my story, and they're like, "What?" Like I can see in their face, like half the time, they're like, "Ain't no damn way!" Like no cracker was at Alabama State and was living that life. Was the phrase two in the mix? But I remember that situation and I remember you being upset about it. And for me, I was so caught up in number one is I didn't grow up with an environment where I was taught, like how you just said, like you went there to be a better man. I mean, I got kicked out of high school and was on probation, so got my GED and went to Alabama State, not because I was trying to better myself. Honestly, I didn't know no better. So I was just trying to get in where I fit in it and figure out life as I still to this day I felt bad because I didn't stand up for you because you were upset about it. When you think back about us back then, what do you remember if you were to go back and look at yourself back then and look at me?
Well, there's a couple of things about you that I remember in particular, and I think it's a reason why, like, after so many years had passed, I'm just gonna say this. Like you stuck out, obviously, because you're a white guy on the yard. And as cool as I wasn't from Detroit, I wasn't from Chicago, I wasn't from Atlanta. I stuck out because I was Virginia. And somehow, even though we were both connected to the Detroit clique, we kind of found each other. And something that I always say when my friends ask about you, what I always say is, I'm always gonna have love for Eastdale, for Clint, because I remember when I had borrowed a friend of ours' car, and the car broke down under my watch. And for like 3 straight days, you got out of your bed and drove me to that car while I tried to get it fixed. When other people were like, I'm tired, I'm sleepy. And that's always gonna stay with me because you didn't have to do that. I merely like, East, can you run me up here? And for 3 straight days, you ran up to that car till we got it together so we could get it back to the yard when everybody was telling me, you broke Will's car. And of course, Will got to the car and was like, oh, we just need to fix it. He owe me $2,000 and whatnot, And like what that showed me was like, excuse my language, you a motherfucker who I could fuck with the long way. And that's what I look back. Because there was a couple of times, when the baseball team would be on the road, and it would just be me on the yard, just hanging out and whatnot. And because I personally, like, when I got to Montgomery, the city itself, I don't know what I was going to be, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be when I got there.
It still ain't.
Look, I went back to Montgomery in '03, and I mean, it had obviously expanded some more, but I was just like, I don't know. I guess I expected it to just move forward. I just,
Montgomery as
it
a
was
whole,
slower than I
man.
thought it would be.
I own a lot there. I bought a piece of land, and people are like, "When are you gonna build?" Man, never, because until the city gets fixed, man. Like it was hood-ish back in the day, but now, bro, you'll get murdered. Like if you go back to visit, like every time I go back to visit. MPD, if you're hearing this, don't pay attention to me. I keep a gun in the car. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. I remember I went home 2 years ago, and this girl, we were on Vine Road, and the girl was trying to merge over, and I couldn't let her merge over. I was gonna run off and hit somebody head on, and I'm like, I'm not gonna. And I remember she pulled up beside me, and she was like, "You cracker!" And at first, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take one for the team. I'll be that." So I was like, "Okay, okay." So she followed me into the thing. Hey. Old Clinton popped out real quick, 0 to Chris Brown. I said, "Look. I don't fight girls, but if you want to call your baby daddy, your boyfriend, or whoever else, I'm going to be in this store about 30 minutes. You let me know if they want to go trigger play, fighting. We can go knives, whatever. I'm going to let them, like Gangs of New York, I'm going to let them choose the weapon of choice. But I'm going to be here for about 30 minutes. But that's how it's wild, wild, wild. Now, it's like the Wild West, literally. But diving back in, for one of the things for me that I remember about our connection specifically was, I think just that. I think I was a minority, but you were a minority as well in the fact of you were from Virginia. You had this overwhelming energy and the vibe. You were from VA. You had slick talk. Like everybody's like, what are you even talking about? Just like they would say stuff in jitting and all that stuff that we didn't really know, but we knew when it went down that we at least had some people that was down. And there were some of them that were down. There were some of them that weren't all the way down, but you get in where you fit in, and it is what it is. Let me ask you, if you were to sum up our college selves, what would that be?
Well, I'm going specifically to Alabama State. When I left Alabama State, I absolutely positively believed I was ready for the world. I went to Alabama State knowing I wanted to go into education. I did not know when I got to Alabama State that at the time Alabama State was the number 2 largest educator producer um, for Black educators in America. I didn't know that, but like they prepped me between testing and schooling. I was ready. Beyond the classroom, what I appreciate Alabama State was for opening me up to more of, just being honest, the Black experience. Like I met people from Los Angeles, people from Detroit. I met people from Chicago. I knew people from Atlanta. I met people from Mobile. I met Burn. I remember like meeting a guy and him being, you don't like K, he being like, who's UGK? Or you don't like 8 Ball and MJG? Who's 8 Ball? I remember being upset because they weren't enough big
Yeah.
at the park. They were like, boy, you in the South.
The
You better
real
get
South.
the real South. And when I finished at Alabama State, I had met all these people and they had like made it such an impression on me that I could take away and speak, you know, genuinely about people who I met. I remember like wearing a shirt and Hilfiger shirt and a guy saying to me, oh man, we couldn't never wear that back at the crib. And I'm like, why? Look at all these colors in your shirt. You think I could walk in my high school gym with this shirt on? I'm like, hold on. That's real? You really can't wear this color? Absolutely not. And I'm thinking, I'm just trying to get the shirt. Oh, Or even when I used to wear my hat all crazy and cop,
Remember, I
and it would
used to
take,
be like, bruh.
and it would take someone to be like, "That's Fred. He from Virginia. Them rules don't apply to him." Because I had no idea that
Feel different.
this meant. So that's what I would say, looking back, like Alabama State, and everybody has love for their school, but like it really rounded me out to like whatever like blinders I had on what obviously the world, but Black people specifically are, could, would be, and whatnot. I left there knowing that there's a tremendous spectrum, and that's before I got into the 5%ers.
For me, keep it a buck. It taught me what real injustice is. It taught me what racism really is, right? It taught me uh, a different perspective, right? From all aspects, because being Caucasian at a HBCU, man, remember people used to yell Remy across the thing. So I got hammered that way until people got to know kind of me. And even then, some people were like, this cracker, I ain't fooling with it. And it was okay. It was what it was. But for me, I'll never forget that one time we had the cops come up to us, and I remember the cop put the gun in my mouth, and he was like, "Oh, you think you one of these ends, huh?" And I remember thinking to myself, like, "Wait a minute, what?" And I had gone through. I'm from the South, and I dated Black girls back before it was cool, but it made me see life and injustices and things going on in this world from a different perspective. I'm forever grateful for Alabama State for the experience that I had while I was there. What's a memory from ASU that you still laugh about to this day?
So just to catch the people up, at Alabama had this thing called, which would be an opportunity for students to act, do a dance routine. They could rap, whatever you wanted to do that had entertainment value. Clint was hanging, as we talked about, we were with a Detroit clique. And Detroit, they had their own dance style, their own dance music, and he was part of this 4 or 5 man group. And I mean, and so the first 4 guys came out, and at the end of the funny bone, you always cheer for who did the best. I remember y'all had like the black, like the black satin pants or whatever with the matching
Yeah.
Nikes. And Clint came out last after they had been dancing. He came out and put the whole house down. Hey yo, Clint was the man of y'all for the next 2 days.
Bruh. Bro, girls were sliding me notes. This was back, we didn't have cell phones back then. I was getting notes slid to me. Hey, my girl over here wanted you to. I was like, Lord Jesus. That would be number one. A close second to me, since you hit on that one. Parking lot escapade. Bro, when I tell people my life experiences, they look at me and they're like, "Bruh, yeah, ain't no way." I'm gonna set the scene. It was me. It was you.
Everybody, Noki, Armand,
No, no,
Booby.
no. Pull up.
No,
Remember?
no, 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 no. Okay, Note pulled off and set it off.
Yeah, but I'm
That's what it
saying
was.
who was standing there? Our crew was sitting over here. They was across the parking lot. It was Milwaukee. It was Detroit. We looking over there. They looking at us. We're like,
And here's the
oh,
thing. Here's the thing. I'm out there in khakis, polo, and polo boat shoes. No business.
button down.
And here's in a button that here and here was my thought process, Clint. Okay, now this ain't really your beef, but you could mix it up and align yourself with some guys that you've met. Now, are you going to die out here? Probably not. So you'll be okay. Let's go mix it up. Let's go mix it up, And so I'm out there and we had sat like 30 minutes, like you said, Milwaukee over here, Detroit over here, nothing happening. In my mind, I'm
Battlefield.
like,
It was a battle. It wasn't a parking lot, bro. It was at this point, it was a battlefield. Like it was like a 50-yard line. We looking at them, they looking at us.
and in my mind, I'm thinking after about 20, 25 minutes, now these guys know that I'm out here to fight with them, but nothing's happening. So maybe I can pick up some cool points because Fred wanted to fight after fight. And then
Fred
here
had to go
comes
make a phone call. Somebody made a phone call.
that was Booby. That was, I'll say his name. That was Booby from Detroit. I will say his name. Come get me. Yeah, Booby had to make a phone call.
I've been about that life, so I'm picking out already who I want.
I wasn't about that life.
Your button down in khaki screamed it off. Everybody else was in Pelly Pell and jerseys and Detroit hats turned to the side. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this ain't really gonna go down. So, and next thing we know, that Bronco pulls up.
To this day, I tell people, I've never heard a punch connect so clean that it sounded like a gunshot when no hit that guy.
I've been to UFC fights. I've been to bare knuckle fights. No, at the best precision I ever seen in my life. Bro, I still remember that dude's jaw.
Yo,
Next thing I know, I'm sprinting across. I go straight for my guy. Boop, boop. He's down. I'm like, okay, okay. I look around. What was the big dude from Milwaukee? There was one.
I know who you talking about.
The stalking.
I know you talking. I can't.
But
I know who you talking.
I don't know who he was fighting with, but I yeeted on his friend and his friend went down. I turned around and I said, oh, okay, two piece. Boop, boop. I don't know what happened to him because the next thing I know, I heard whoop, whoop, and I was gone.
So while all of that is going on, so Nope starts it off. Guy from Milwaukee, he comes running towards me, and we square up, and we both stop. Like, it's obvious to me, looking back, neither one of us wanted to fight. So in my mind, I was like, well, if nothing else, get off first. And I swung, and I missed. How you miss? He took me, scooped me up. He slammed me. And so he slams me, and he's getting ready to start kicking me. And right when he was about to start kicking me, Mark Will from Detroit came and cleaned his clock like he just disappeared. Mark Will picks me up, and that's when I hit him.
Mark Will had that man strength. He's like a Samoan. You know, them Samoans are just born bench pressing 300 pounds. I'll never forget you coming up, and you weren't mad that you got rolled up under the car. You wasn't mad about all of that. You went straight at Booby. Booby, how the hell you gonna get a phone call?
So now he mad at me. He mad at me. I'm like, hold on. They seen me. You was gone. How you mad? Like, fuck you, Fred. How you mad at me? I was fighting.
Let me ask you, if that college version of you could see you now, what do you think they would say?
The college version of me, honestly, he'd probably be a little bit like, this is how I ended up, because the college version of me, all he wanted to do was get back to Norfolk, get to work,
Not get rolled under cars.
And not get rolled under cars. For so long in my life, even back at Alabama State, my life has been focused on my son, who I had at Alabama State. I don't think Alabama State, Winfred, would be upset at where we are at right now. I don't think.
Definitely don't. Thinking back about you, you were the most consistent person that I've ever met. Like if I was to say, hey, this is how minus you having Christian when you did, if I was to gamble, this is what his life would be. It is exactly, you are the person and the energy and the vibe that I always thought and knew that you would be. For me, I would say I would be shocked. Back then, man, I didn't even know what real life was until I went to like deep intensive therapy like 6 years ago. I didn't know what real life was. Like, I didn't know what healthy relationships were. I knew what it was to have connections, but I also knew that for me, I had these things that were weighing on me that I didn't want people to know, and some things that were so traumatizing. So for me, I look back at that kid and say he would be proud because, over the past 6 years, I've worked really hard to acknowledge and change myself as a person, as a father. I would say I'm proud of. So fast forward, this is crazy. We're dads, me times 5. Whew, Lord, pull out game week. Now my fight game is strong. Don't get me wrong. Um, how did becoming a dad shift your life?
Well, I look at it kind of in like two phases. There was Christian's birth and then me getting custody of Christian.
Yeah.
At Alabama, when he was born, his mother went to Indianapolis to have him, and she brought him back to Alabama State. And that's when he would be with me on the yard with Will and Steve, my two roommates, and I'd be walking around the yard with him. Initially, it really wasn't that big a deal, because I had a father growing up, and to have a child, initially it was a whole thing of, well, I had a father. My son is not going to have a father. And then, like initially, like he's on the yard or whatever, and then Keisha graduated, his mother graduated, and then they came to stay with me in Norfolk. We had a little bit of turbulence, and then I got a Christian when he was 5. So from 5 on, it was me and him. But once I got custody of him, everything that I did was all intents and purposes, just focused on him. I had this hashtag that I picked up called Just One Son. And I really like poured into him this whole thing of like, hey Playboy, it's all you. You're gonna get it all. You don't have a sibling to split it with. You don't have a sibling with your dad. I couldn't make it because it's all you. To the point where Christian, when he was like 9 or 10, he expressed to me, he was like, Dad, I feel like you want me to be perfect. And I was like, oh, sucks for you. Tough break. You'll be all right. Because I felt like, you know, you're never going to feel like, well, my dad wasn't there for me or I didn't get enough, because you're going to get it all. It's just me and you. I don't have any other children. I'm in Norfolk at that time. Your grandparents are here. Your aunts are here. You're not going to want for anything. And he's an adult now, but I really dedicated my life to like being like, yo, if you want it, if I can provide it for you, you're going to get it, with the hope that it would pay off with him being a civilized human being and being able to function in the world. And so far, that has seemed to pan out.
One of the things I've learned as a parent, and people always try to be like, I don't know why. Man, kids are gonna do what they want to do. All we can do is give them the tools. My oldest daughter, I learned that with her. And it took me going through a lot of therapy and stuff to unlearn traits that I learned as a father, right? Because we were taught in a different generation. We were taught if your parents said something, that was, you didn't question it. It was just is what it is. You better do it. Whereas now it's not that. So like my daughter, I had to learn to listen to acknowledge it's a different.
Hold on, but to your point, I just want to add, it really is. It's a toss up. Like you mentioned, I'm an educator. I work with children who get everything they want, had their feet turned over twice a month. And just to be honest with you, they're horrible. And I work with babies who have extreme home conditions. And every day they come to school with their face like, Mr. Thomas, what we learned in a day. It really is a toss up. You can pour into a baby all you want. And if they're determined they're not going to buy into what you are sharing with them as a parent, what are you going to do?
And one of the things that I've learned is with emotional stuff. Like I've got a friend of mine who he had what you would prototypical say had the silver spoon life or whatever, but his dad didn't give him attention or whatever and made it more about what he could financially do for him instead of the time. And so my friend will look at me and like, we'll talk about stuff and he'll be like, well, I feel bad talking about my stuff because of all of the things you had to go through. And I'm like, man, what's turmoil to me ain't gonna be turmoil to you. And what was tough for me, it might not be tough for you. So we all walk a path. And so that's why with my kids, I know I learned to just I give them the tools and then I quite honestly I let them fail when they need when they want to choose because it teaches them to be more conscious with decisions as they get older. So Is there anything that you would do now as a father that's intentional that we didn't have growing up? Talking about how things are different.
I don't. That's a tough question. Because you say that we didn't have. I personally, my father, super dad. I can't. I honestly, I can't find a fault with my father. I can find a fault with myself as a father. Which Christian recently, he took me out for Father's Day last year, and he shared with me that he was like, I feel like we grew up in a house that wasn't very big on sharing emotionally. And he said that he felt that he wished there were times when he felt like he could not share exactly how he felt, which raising him, I didn't feel that way. I'm like, hey, I'm available, talk to me. But guess what? It doesn't matter how I feel. He was sharing that he felt like there were times when he couldn't share with me. And I told him, like, I hate that you felt that way because I was always open and available. But I also know from just who I am or was as a father, and from my sisters telling me I was hard on Christian. Now, part of me being hard was because he was the only child, and I told him I don't have another child to be like, oh, well, I'll get it right on this one. It's just you. So I was hard on him. So if I could go back and acknowledge that that was something that, if you can go back in time, and I hate to play that game, but I would acknowledge, okay, maybe give an opportunity for Christian to be more expressive in the house with his emotions.
Fast forward, you're an educator now. What's something about teaching that most people outside wouldn't understand?
I think the general thinking of education is that students come in and educators just teach. And on June 1st, we get out and we have off till September something. I mean, everybody, don't teachers get summers off? Like, I've been teaching since 2000. Summers off is not a thing. First of all, school doesn't end June 1st. This year I got off on June 20th. Second of all, throughout the summer, your principals are reaching out to you. You have to come back for professional development. You come back a week early. The summer has encroached in. It's not teachers having summer off is a thing. So I would think one is the fact that summers off don't exist, and teachers are more than just teachers. Teachers are nurses, psychiatrists, doctors, moms, dads, mentors. They're everything. And who knows who's going to see this, but I want them to know that's if the teacher chooses to take on that role. Because I'm someone who I know I love teaching. When I walked on the Alabama State campus, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I got my degree. I went home, started teaching, got my master's. 25 years in, rare is the day when I leave the classroom thinking I should have took some business courses. I love teaching, but I've worked with some people who know, hey, 8 o'clock I'm in the building, 3:30 I'm out the door. Don't ask me for nothing else. If your baby gets one of those teachers, that's why it's important for parents to be involved on all aspects of their child's education. Like, I know, like, just for instance, during COVID, it's not required of me, but guess what? A baby didn't have a book. I'm driving to that baby house. Here go the book. Here go the book. Other teachers weren't doing that. And guess what? That wasn't part of their job description. They didn't have to do it. I did because I wanted my babies to have a book. Because that's how I. And so, like, to answer your question, what do people not know? Like, teachers are asked to do all of those things. Now, whether they do it or not, that's up to the individual.
There's not enough Winfred Thomases out there. And I mean, I know like my cousin is an educator and she's bomb diggity same way. Like she stresses herself out about ways that she can help the kids. But again, there's a lot of people in there that are just there for, a check and I get it. Being a teacher is hard, man. You don't get paid a lot
It is.
and
It's hard.
it's multifaceted. It's the same thing like with real estate. People think, oh, you got a salesperson. No, brother, I am a psychiatrist first and foremost because I'm juggling people's emotions, the other agent's emotion, the seller's, the buyer. Like people are so emotional. So as a teacher, I couldn't even imagine 30 some odd people in a class, 6 classes a day, whatever the case may be. That. Speaking of that, what do you think is the biggest difference between the classroom when we grew up and the classroom?
Well, here's the thing. Since I entered the classroom in 2000, it's 2025. Literally, I've taught two generations. Like, I've taught students who now have children. So I've taught two generations. Like, I've taught children who had parents, and now those parents have been made grandparents. Just off the top of my head, the biggest difference is I remember in 2000, if I had an issue with a child, I would go to the parent and I say, hey, Joe is causing issues in my class. And on the whole, it would get dealt with right there in my face in front of me. Why are you giving Mr. Thomas a whole time? This is that and other. As opposed to 2025, Joe is causing a problem in my class. A lot of times, not all the times, but a lot of the times is, well, Mr. Thomas, what did you do? And you know, what I told Joe, he don't have to listen. That's a real thing. And it's to the point, as an educator, it's like, okay, I see. This child knows that they can do no wrong. So they legitimately have entered my class with the thinking, why would I have to listen to what you have to say, Mr. Thomas? No matter what you say, my mom, my father, my grandparent, they're not buying it. That's the biggest difference. That and the explosion of special education in the classroom.
And
You know, with
documentation.
so many students. Yes.
Back in the day, it used to be, I know my daughter had a situation at school, and that we're talking about documentation, and I'm going to tell you the whole dilemma. So my 9-year-old, when she was in kindergarten, she's not very fleet-footed. She's kind of slow. She ain't gonna fight. Now, she's a mastermind. She'll get her siblings to fight for her all day, but she ain't gonna fight. And so she was at school and she was in kindergarten, and this girl was chasing her, trying to fight her. So she ran. She said, Dad, I ran as much as I could, but then I got tired. I said, well, it probably wasn't much. She said, yeah, it was just around the corner. And she told the little girl, she said, if you put your hands on me, I'm going to call my daddy and he's going to come up here with his gun. We in California, bro. Them folks called me, do you have a gun in the house? Yes, I got a gun in the house. It's locked up. It's keyed. It's everything. So then come in and I said, hey, I understand she shouldn't have said that and I'm going to take care of that. But I think we're diverting from what the root of that was, right? And I'm going to handle my business. But she wouldn't have had to say that if this girl wasn't trying to run up on her. Like, so are we going to handle that? So then they said something to her. Then they came back and said that they wanted my daughter suspended and they were going to call the police. And man, it turned into this big fiasco. And I'm like, back in the day, it wouldn't have been all that. It would have been like, hey, don't do that.
Yeah,
we're grown now and we've evolved, but what part of you had to die for you to, this version of you to be?
well, so much of this version in front of you right now is the result of a divorce. I got married in 2012, and my marriage, I was married for 6 years, and then I went through a divorce. And you know, we don't have to go into all of that. My ex wasn't happy with going through a divorce. I didn't want a divorce. I wanted to work on a marriage. But you know, it is what it is. And what happens is I'm depressed, and I've never been depressed in my life, and I don't recognize it. And I have a few friends up here who recognize, like, yo, you need to go to therapy. And you know, I grew up in a Bible background. It's like, you go to God, you ain't going to talk to nobody. But anyway, they convinced me. I go to therapy. It works. It's real. Anyone who needs it, you should go to therapy. And I had got to this point in therapy, and I kept saying, I just want to get back to being me. I don't feel like myself. And it took a friend of mine who said, you know what, Winfred, you keep saying that you want to get back to being you. That's never going to happen. The you that you're seeking was married, was happily married, and wanted to be with your ex-wife. She's gone. She's not coming back. You have to craft a new you, and it's going to be hard, but you have to do it. So it something about that conversation resonated with me, because I literally was saying, I just want to get back to the old me. And there was no way ever I could play lottery for 100 years. I never was going to get back to the old me. And, you know, through therapy and, you know, there was a friend of mine who told me, everything about you has to change. You need a new cologne. You need new underwear. You need new clothes. You need to leave that person in the
You need to
past.
go work out, get them abs.
Yo, I started going to the gym. And that's how, like, this person that I am now. And the crazy thing about it is, you know, part of it is my son, who, when the divorce happened, Christian was a sophomore in college. So he saw his dad absolutely happy and his father absolutely devastated. And he's seen his father now. And, so much of me getting better was, and it goes back to my point of, raising a decent child, of like, that boy in college, you on the yard ripping and running, but you better believe, like, every Friday I would get a call from him like, "Hey dad, just checking in. Are you doing okay?" and whatnot. But like you said, the person I am today, it's me, like, just essentially just changing my life and closing that chapter and whatnot. Because, like, if I had my druthers, and everything could be right, I wouldn't have wanted a divorce. But these are things that happen.
And we evolve. That's the hardest
Yes,
part,
you
is
have to.
killing. Yeah, you have to. That's the hardest part, is killing that. And that's where it's a scaredness, but it's also ego. There's so many things, and we don't know. We're uncomfortable with change. And so for me, I know it was really hard for me, saying like what happened to me as a kid, because I went to therapy, and that's where it was revealed I was sexually assaulted as a kid. And it was by a family member. And, we're taught, you're not supposed to tell on family members, but it all tied back, because when I started going to therapy, like, I would talk, and, we laughed about, but I've got at least 5 kids by 3 different women, right? And there's no telling how many, probably more kids I have out there. And I don't say that is to be cool, but it's who I was. Like, I slept with any and everything. Once I was going to therapy, my therapist was like, "Well, does this make sense to you?" And I'm like, "What?" She was like, "You've gone through your life in projects and putting yourself in dangerous gunplay situations. You've slept with hundreds of women. You got all these kids. You're a fighter. You're doing all these things." She was like, "You're trying to prove your manhood through traits that you thought or think make you more manly." And it was when she said that, I was like, damn, like, that's crazy. And I had to kill off that version of myself and put that ego to the side. And when I first started talking about my story, I didn't do it. People, like, some people get on here and they want to sell you these books, and they want to talk about they're gurus, and they want you to buy their coach. I don't do any of that. I don't want money. I don't need people. I share my story because I feel like God put me on this earth and put me through the pain that he put me through to be a life changer for other people. And so I get on here and I talk about things that are uncomfortable, about being sexually assaulted, about being beaten, about being like all of these things, and killing that version of yourself off, because I kept thinking to myself, if I tell people, then they're going to judge me. They're going to condemn me. But it's like, hey, bro, like, until you can be like, "Hey, this happened." And man, I had guys like fighters, all these people that reached out. I've had people that reached out and said, "Man, like, I thought about killing myself until I heard your story and realized that there's more guys out there that there's happened to." So that's the hardest part, is killing off that version of ourselves. It's the struggle. But you know, I want to talk about something that is been taboo in our country, and something people don't necessarily feel comfortable with talking about, because we want to sweep things under the rug, and we want to act like we live in a society where all people are treated equal. But I wanted to ask you specifically, as a Black father, how do you raise your kids to feel seen and strong in a world that often tells them that they're otherwise?
I think for me in particular with Christian, it was twofold. One, try to go out of my way to expose Christian to as much of the world as I could, whether that was through travel, whether that was through eating in high-end restaurants, whether that was making the most of living in Washington, D.C., and hitting the Smithsonian and walking Monument Road, because I felt like I never wanted Christian, as a Black male, to ever be in a room and feel like he couldn't converse with anybody on any topic. Like I tell people all the time, one of my greatest moments as a father was Christian. I and my ex-wife were at a Oscar party, and Christian was eating. He had tried 2 different types of caviar, and this lady was chatting him up like, "Oh, I see you like the caviar." Or whatever. And he was across the room for me, and I saw him talking to a woman who I did not know. Kind of like moonwalked over there to hear the conversation. He was like, "Yeah, I like caviar." And she was like, "Well, what's your favorite food?" And he was like, "Oh, my favorite food is the grilled squid in the ink sauce at Vinoteca, this place in the city." And I was like, "Talk that talk, talk that talk." Just let her know that, guess what? I've been places, I've seen things, I've tried things. This caviar thing you see me doing, that's not new to me. And the other piece of that is, beyond being able to talk in those certain rooms, the world is the world. Be aware of who and what you are. And I said, Christian, here's the thing. You are 6'1". I'm not 6 foot. He's taller than me. You're a 6'1" black male. That is a real thing. And you need to handle yourself accordingly. When people see you, you're going to draw attention. When you think you're talking in your regular voice, they hear you screaming. When you're approaching with caution, they potentially will feel like they're being attacked. And you need to remember that. And especially when we first got to the city, coming from Norfolk, where his dad is kind of known. People know his grandmother. And I told him, like, we're new to this city. There's no one I can call and be like, "Hey, I'm Veronica's son." Like, people know your grandmother. I was like, we have to have our head on swivel. Like, and that was in regards to him being a black male. Is one, you should be comfortable in all spaces, but have an awareness that just because you're comfortable, other people may not be comfortable in you being that. So that's what I tried to teach him before he left me and went off to school.
Whew. That was deep. Even with all the growth, there's a core in us that's never changed. Loyalty, brotherhood, and faith. Let me ask you, what does legacy mean to you today as a man, as a father, someone that's planting seeds for the next generation?
I don't know. People talk about legacy and, like, my father would say, "I don't care anything about it because if I did, I'd have more children." But
I got some if you want to borrow them.
that's my father. My father says I'm selfish because I don't care anything about my name because I have more children. But when I think of legacy, I recently just had a student who I taught in 2002, a couple of weeks ago, found me on social media, DM'd me, was like, "Hey, Mr. Thomas, do you remember me? My name is Tayshawn." I say, "I remember you." She was like, "Do you remember when in class on Fridays you would bake?" Because this was back when schools had actual kitchens. I said, "Yeah, we used to do Fun Friday." She was like, "I'm a baker now." And she was like, "I really think so much of me being a baker is like how upset I would be whenever I didn't get chose to go to the kitchen to bake with you."
Said, well, Tashawn,
I said, "Well, Tayshawn, you got chosen a lot." And she was like, "Yeah, but I wanted to get chosen every time." And I was like, "Well, we got to spread the wealth." But when we talk about legacy, they always, in education, they say, if you touch one child, you've made a difference or whatever. And I like to believe that, over the course of my educational career, at this point, it's 25 years, that I've touched a few students, not all of them, because, there's students out there who couldn't stand Mr. Thomas. But periodically you will come across a child who, you absolutely positively made a difference in their life. And, that's what I think about legacy. Someone who is at this point about to be 30 years old and they can take the time to, like, you know what, I want to reach out to Mr. Thomas, because I remember when he was my teacher and he made an impact on my life. That's how I look at legacy.
that's dope. You always been the type that breaks bread with people. So I could see how, like, if not to gas you up, because if you was a horrible teacher, I'd be like, "Hey, you suck, but you still my homie." But I would definitely want my kids in your class. And my daughter, especially my Savannah, she would definitely be like, "Hey, you better pick me every day. You my daddy's friend." She'll use it too. Let me ask you this. What do you want people to say about you when you're not there to listen?
You know what? For real, I don't require much. I want people, like, depending on who they are in my life, I want my friends to be like, you know what? Winfred is a good friend. When I call on him, I can depend on him. I want people who I just come across to say, I really don't know him that well, but when I was around him, when I did meet his acquaintance, it was a good time. I want my parents to say that I was a good son. I want my son to say I couldn't imagine having anybody else as my father. So much of my life, what I try to do is to give more than I get, because I have an understanding that in my life I've been given a lot. So I'm always trying to put out more than I receive.
Couldn't see you in any other role but being a teacher. You just have that natural instinct and that giving personality and that vibrance that if I was a student, I ain't gonna lie, I'd be signing up for your class. I know for me, one of the things that I'll always remember about you is your willingness to always give, but even more, one of the things that I will always uh, have an admiration is something I talked about before, is you always staying true to who you are. That in this world is a tough thing for a lot of people to do. And so you're a rare gem. And that's why you'll forever have my loyalty and my brotherhood. One of many reasons. But, I ain't gonna lie to you. I've had a lot of episodes and I've been trying to keep them with 30 minutes, but I knew ours was gonna go longer than that. But I honestly needed this episode. I'm trying to get back to my people, and we're getting older. I mean, I don't want to say how old we are, but we're getting old. Troy passed away probably 2, 3 years ago. His passing away really weighed heavy on me because I was like, man, I probably should have called him more. When I went to Montgomery, I probably should have reached out more. And we get caught up in this rat race we call life. And we get caught up in doing everything else. And so I'm in this season where I want to get back to my people, and get back to the people that feed my soul and that I can feed theirs. And it's a mutual thing as opposed to feeling like I have to overextend or feeling like that I have to fit in a box. With you, I can just, it's been, I ain't gonna say how many years, but still to this day, I can just be real raw and there ain't no, I feel like I have to sit up and I feel like I have to whatever. And it's crazy. We've come a long way. And the truth is we're still evolving. This conversation really reminded me, you don't have to be perfect. You just got to be present. And that's one of the things that I've really been trying to focus on. One of the things that I really wanted this podcast to be about is about understanding life from all different angles and understanding that everybody has trials and tribulations. And it's not about where you start. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about getting up. And the real flex is staying solid through the shift into your people. And for me, you'll always be my ace boon coon. And before we get out of here, I want to send a special shout out from the yard to the real world. Alabama State gave me a lot of memories, but bigger than that, it gave me a lot of lifelong friends, and you're one of them. And I want to tell you how much I truly appreciate you, and you already know I'm always here for you, anything you need. We're signing out. This is the Front Porch Chronicles. I hate to let this one go because I could talk to you all night. No homo. Till next time, stay real, stay rooted, and we'll see you next week on the Front Porch. Jangalang, jangalang.